introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver.
So our topic today is if you're looking at an existing practice, and let's say that you're fairly established, where do you start first? Where is the low-hanging fruit? And as we work with clients, I think they all think that we're going to go create some new big marketing deal, and we're going to go build a social media thing, build an online presence, do all this other stuff, and we do all that. It's just that I always think about, and it's again, this was a great quote. One of our former clients is our current client was talking to him and said, "Well, what do these guys do?" And he goes, "Well, he found money laying around my business that I didn't know was there." I thought it was a great line. In fact, I had another story like that where a prospective client talked to another current client, and he said, "Well, they sure turn shacks into mansions." I thought that was a great line too. I hadn't heard that one before. But most people have more money laying around, metaphorically on the floor, than they're picking up. And the money tends to be in lists, right? It tends to be in who do I have that's in the CRM, on an Excel file or on pieces of paper that raised their hand that I didn't end up with as a client. Who is it that I maybe used to have as a client who's not currently a client? What do I have buried in my client list who perhaps could buy more, perhaps I'm not managing their assets, I just sold them an annuity or an insurance policy, or I could generate referrals from. And we tend to start with what are your current resources, and there's more to it than that, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we want to make sure we do when we take on a new client is get them to a place where they can get results quickly.
Yeah.
And to set up, we want to build out a really robust system for them to get more clients on a regular basis and make sure they get the most efficiency with each client. So they make the most per client, they get the highest, the most assets under management per client, and they keep them the longest. So we want to do all of that. But one of the first lines of attack should be where is the quickest way that they can get new clients. And what they think is I got to go out there and get more clients. I got to go outside of my own business and get clients. And what you're saying is, and what's really important is it's already there. And it's already there in past clients. So we want to make sure that you understand these basic concepts so that you can do a good job of marketing. And what we kind of hear all the time is, well, I did this marketing and I got a bunch of prospects and leads. I called them a couple times and I got a few clients from it, and that was the end of it. Well, okay, you called them a couple times and you assume from calling them a couple times, and because they didn't answer the phone, that therefore they're never going to be interested in working with you. Well, there's lots and lots and lots of reasons why they didn't answer the phone. They were busy. You just didn't call them at the right time. It wasn't the right time for them in their life. There's all kinds of different reasons why that wasn't the right time for them to work with you. Or they just didn't answer the phone because they were busy or whatever. And we got to understand that those people are worth their gold mine, and we've got to get back to them right away. So when we start working with a client, that's a big line of attack. So we can we want to go over what the idea behind the different levels of prospects and clients that you might have out there are.
Yeah, and well, I on the line of topic that you were just talking about there is I told you about the conversation I had, and it's very sharp gentleman, high producer, coming from being captive in a big life insurance company into being an independent RIA. And he was just learning direct response marketing and studied a lot of, fairly smart people. But he says to me, I said, so you have a new prospect, what do you do with them? And he said, well, I learned about email, and email's great, and I want it to be very personal and relatable, so I created 29 emails, and they get an email every day. I said, oh, well, great. So in the end, he goes, it's very conversational, it's very personal, it looks personal. And I was like, great.
Good so far?
Yeah, good so far. And I said, what happens after 29 days? He goes, oh, I wipe them off the list because obviously they're not interested.
Yeah.
If they don't buy in September, they might be really interested in December. They might be interested in January. They might be interested in March. Hell, we had a client meeting, and one of them said, yeah, you were sending me things for 7 years.
Right.
Another
right.
one said, yeah, for 4 years. Another one said 9 years, right?
Yeah.
Which was kind of discouraging, but it is what it is. But what the number one thing is, as you said, is most of the time you haven't gotten to them very effectively. And two is, just because they're not ready now doesn't mean they're not ready in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 9 years, for God's sake. But then the second part of the conversation was, okay, so they get an autoresponder email and Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever the hell, some CRM. What else are you doing? And he looked at me like I was from planet Mars. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, are they getting sequential autoresponder direct mail? Are they getting like a package in the mail?
And the direct mail one is interesting because we get a lot of people just kind of freaking out at that, going, oh, what do you mean? Snail mail, isn't it? Like it's a bad name or it's a bad word. And it's ludicrous because that works it works fantastic. Yeah. But people are not taking advantage of that at all. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know how I feel about email, but
Yeah.
But so I said, so are you doing any direct mail? Are you mailing him your book? Are you mailing him a postcard? Do you have a sequence? He goes, oh no, I don't do any direct mail. Same reaction that you got. I said, well, okay. As an aside, what's a new client worth? Oh, well, they're usually going to spend like $50,000 with me over their term of being around. Okay. Well, that's quite a bit, but how about like immediately? What are they worth? Well, they're worth $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Okay, so you don't want to put a first-class piece of a stamp on a postcard and mail it to them, even though they're worth $50,000? Well, that's expensive. What? Right? And of course, we can build out a postcard sequence that's like a buck a drop. So you spend $12, hit them 12 times. You can mail them a book for $4 or $5, right? I mean, hell, the book's $2 or $3. And then I said, so are you doing outbound calls to them? Well, no. Are you doing automated voicemail to them? No. Are you doing text messaging to them? No. Well, okay, email's fine. To me, it's dying a slow and painful death, and it may not be that slow. But you have deliverability problems. You have the average person gets 200 emails a day. The average person gets 4 pieces of mail in their mailbox per day. And text messaging still has essentially 100% deliverability rate and essentially 100% open rate. It's like 98 and 94%. Now that'll go away as the marketers start dominating it. But why wouldn't you, if you got a lead, why wouldn't you email, text, voicemail, call, and direct mail? And by the way, the next question was, well, are you doing any retargeting? What's retargeting? Well, you know how when you go to, like I was shopping for like Lynn's camera here. I was shopping for a video camera a couple years ago, and I went to B&H Video, and I went to Amazon, and I went to somebody else, New York something or other, and looked at video cameras. Well, I got to tell you, for the next 3 or 4 months, everywhere I looked, I was getting high-end, $5,000 video cameras showing up in ads all over the damn place. Well, I went to 3 different places who were smart, right? Because Amazon does the hell out of this, but also B&H, that's a right?
Yeah, B&H Video, yeah.
They're smart at this, and New York, whatever, they're smart at it. But retargeting doesn't have to be, they went to the website.
Right.
Is that what people don't know? Is it can be, you have the little HTML code, and you start showing up in Google and start showing
Well,
up on Facebook.
it's when you start seeing everybody's ad,
Yeah.
something you search for, and then you start seeing it up in lots of other places, like in your Facebook.
Yeah.
When you look at Facebook, when you look at a news feed, when you look even on my iPad, I see it pop up when I'm looking at a newspaper feed.
But it can also be, I have their email address, their name, their address, and I upload it into Google and upload it into Facebook and say, show these
Yeah,
ads, right?
and then start showing up
Yeah.
everywhere.
So in that example, if there's a new prospect that raised their hand anywhere, I went to a live event and they gave me their business card, whatever, I can show up in Facebook and all of their properties, Instagram and so forth. I can show up in Google and all their properties, which is like the rest of the internet pretty much, right? And then I can email to them, might as well, it's free. But I can text message, I can voicemail them, I can have a live person calling them, and I can do direct mail. And then the next question I ask him is, well, what are you doing to get your contact information on their phone? He goes, what do you mean?
Lots of what do you means.
I said, well, if you pick up the phone and call them, like we used to do big live events. I remember one, we had so many leads that we were in black trash bags. I mean, this is, of course, that's back when I had a big staff, right? So we had 20 people, probably more like 30 people on Sunday night doing outbound calls.
Yeah, I know the days where we'd have the purpose was to get a name, phone, and later email when email became a thing. We've been doing this long enough that email wasn't a thing back then. But it used to be you'd get your
Pre-email,
name.
yeah.
It used to be you just get their name and phone number, and then you'd call them, and that's when people answer their phone. Now they don't.
Yeah.
Different strategy now, but
Yeah.
But when you call them, they follow up with what I think I know where you're going with this,
go ahead.
but following up with what you're saying now, when you call them, a lot of times they don't answer the phone. One of the strategies that we want to make sure we do is when we're having.
Well, I could exaggerate and say they never answer their phone if they don't recognize the phone.
Pretty much that's the thing. If you call them and they don't recognize your phone number, a lot of times people don't answer it. But what you can do is send out by email, by text, by multiple methods, or when you're face-to-face with them, if it's a live event where you captured their information, send them your contact record. And it's technically called a V card. But it's just your, from your iPhone.
You know what's new? Is one of our guys has a wristband and a tablet and a business card, and you tap it, and Near Field Communications shares it.
Yeah, there's a credit card version of it too. So there's multiple ways you can share this, but it's just from your contact record on your phone, just your regular contact record, and you can share it from your phone from multiple sources. So you can share your contact record with somebody and they can add it to their phone list. Yeah. When you do that, then when you call them, it's going to show as an actual person. It's going to show your business name or you. And even though it's you as a business, they're 10 to 100 times more likely to answer the phone because you're in their contact list. So that's a critical thing to do. So outbound calling then will work much better, and they'll be much more likely to answer the phone and or listen to your voicemail if you left them a voicemail.
Yeah, and we're getting stuck in the weeds a little bit, but to step back with the strategies, when you're looking at your business, you start with, what are my current opportunities?
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
And so you and I always ask, what makes you special? What's unique about you? And they'll be, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, are you in the Kiwanis Club? Are you in your alumni association? Did you have a career before you did this? And a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I used to do blank, which is a perfect niche where they all need a financial planner.
Somebody we talked to the other day was the mayor of a town, so he had a
yeah.
relationship with other mayors and other politicians.
Well, and we have a client who practicing CPA still, and one who was a general contractor, and you can go through the list. In fact, another one who was in SAG and a working actress and a working model. Well, all of those things are, well, oh my goodness, you have affinity with that group. Do you have a list of them? Are you in their association? Do you go to meetings? Do you get a magazine? Are you on their newsletter? What is it? And so that's where we tend to start. Is another client is like into Porsches, so he's got a 30-year relationship with a Porsche dealer, and he spent $2.3 million with them or something like that over the years. And so, what about their client base? I mean, that's a fairly affluent client base. Why don't we market to their client base? And all the way down to we have a live meeting in the dealership, because they have plenty of room, and can have the meeting at the dealership. And of course, that way his clients can see the cars and be enticed, and their clients can come down and learn about how to have enough money to both retire without being in poverty and buy toys, right? But you start with, what are my current resources? And it's, what do I do? What's my background? What affiliations do I have? What organizations am I involved with? What are my hobbies? And other.
I gotta say, if I have a relationship with this Porsche dealer, I spent $2 million with him, and I'm in the Porsche Club. That is money lying on the floor.
Oh yeah.
That's money lying on the floor.
And haven't even thought to pick up any of it.
Yeah. That's a good example of what you can do like immediately.
Yeah.
And within 30 days, you can have something going that everybody benefits. That's like the art gallery example, which is the same guy, by the way.
Yeah.
But
well, I immediately took a picture of him with his car, and I said, okay, so they have a local newsletter, they have a regional newsletter, they have PCA events, Porsche Club events. Of course, I have the same affliction, so I knew all of this.
Sure.
But they have the track events, they have other events, they have a national magazine. We can do all of it, right? And if you have the relationship with the dealer, they can communicate to their clientele, and I bet they have a big database of.
Plus, how likely is it that you're going to like those people you're dealing with, and they're going to like you, and it's going to be easier to, close more business and do more business with them. I mean,
here's how far I went with that one. Yes, okay, let's get the office. And we're going to have the garage over there, and you're going to set it up really nicely, and you're going to have your collection of vintage Porsches over there. There's going to be a glass wall, and the conference room is here, and the whole thing has the German, Porsche theme. And so your office is here, the conference room here, and there's a glass wall and the cars. I thought it was a great idea.
That's perfect.
But
those are the things that you can do. That again, can you imagine that? That's literally money lying on the floor that you just got to pick up.
Yeah.
And again, it's fun. I mean, it would be right along with what you like doing.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's not the I'm no worse than anybody else syndrome. It's what makes you interesting. Remember, we have another client who's we were going through the same set of questions, right? What do you do? What makes you unique? One thing or another. He goes, well, that I'll admit to. I said, well, don't tell me any sexual perversion.
Right. Don't do those.
But he's into Star Wars, and I mean he's a Star Wars geek, right? So he goes to the conventions, and he's got a room in his house with like every Lego Star Wars thing on shelves and so forth. Well, it's not me, Of course, I'm a Trek guy, right? But there's a whole bunch of people who are into that,
right?
And there's a bunch of other people like me. I mean, I'm in his target audience. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think it's super cool. So why doesn't he use the photos of him geeked out, him and his wife? He has all these pictures of he's dressed up like, well, not the Wookiee. I was telling him I want him dressed up like the Wookiee, but he's dressed up like Han and different guys, and he's going to Comic-Con.
I think you had a background of him in the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But why not go full hog on that?
Right.
And most people, you and I start calling it the oak dress or the oak desk with a J.C. Penney suit.
Right.
I mean, it seems like every financial advisor is the same picture,
If you look like everybody else, you're just going to be everybody else.
Yeah.
And then you're marketing by zip code.
Exactly.
Or you're getting prospects by zip code. And that's just
stupid.
Never going to be, it's never going to be a big growth strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and nor loyalty, nor referrals, nor anything else, right? I mean, I don't want to go to a luncheon with my friends and say, I got this new financial advisor. Oh my good, he's got this designation, he's got a CACP, I'm going to butcher these, a CFP, and a C da-da-da-da-da. Well, they don't know or give a shit about any of that stuff, right? But if I say, oh yeah, I worked with my advisor today, and he's such a Star Wars geek, and by the way, he's really sharp at this stuff. He wrote the book on it, but he's so cool. You'd love to meet him, right? I went to my advisor today, and he just came from the day at the track, and they were doing this stuff, and he had driven up his new turbo, right? I mean, whatever it is you got to be interesting.
And you bring up a good point. We want you to be interesting, and we want you to build authority.
Right.
The way you build authority, you have to have, just like we talked about in other segments, your qualifications are very important, and you have to have those. Just like if you were a medical doctor, you'd have to be an MD. If you were an orthopedic surgeon, you'd have to have those qualifications. But you need to be interesting for a certain reason, like we're talking about. But you build authority possibly because you wrote a book, and we help. You can go have the book ghostwritten, but you could write a book. You have white papers. You have other pieces that you've done.
You were on
build
TV.
authority.
You were in the
you
paper.
were on TV.
You had magazine covers. Yeah.
And those don't have to be. You don't have to be the most extrovert guy. You don't have to be the best writer. But you need to build authority for those reasons that are also a unique thing. So this uniqueness is personality. That doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Tony Robbins, you don't have to be outgoing, you don't have to be a performer, but you can build this personality thing based on who you are. And maybe some of you might think, well, I don't have much personality. Okay, we can help you with that. But then also build authority around who you are as well. It's not because you have more letters after your name as much as, I have a PhD, you hear me, I only say that because that doesn't really it doesn't really do anything except maybe in a particular niche as an MBA.
I tell everybody MBA stands for more bad answers, and PhD is piled higher and deeper.
Exactly. It doesn't change anything. The authority's built in certain things you've done, or in some uniqueness in other areas. And that's really important. And frankly, if we were talking to doctors, it'd be the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
People usually pick doctors by zip code, for goodness sake, and which insurance is covered.
Yeah.
Which one is covered by your insurance. That's kind of a lousy way, if I was a doctor, to get business.
Back when we were in franchising with both feet and up hip deep, we had the most expensive franchising lawyer in, a 10-state area with Perkins Coie. But they were into mountain biking and hiking, and there was this uniqueness to who they were, right? And even their office. You walked in their office, and it was kind of laid back, and it was fun. And most of the time you were there was a birthday cake for one of the associates and stuff. And it wasn't like white shoe, boring, oak panels, and nobody has any personality. My other friend Lorenzo, he's a very highly paid attorney, but he also is into mariachi. He's a musician, so he's put out CDs and he travels around playing with a mariachi band. But it's like cool, right?
Yeah.
And so he's got some of the the highest end clients, but they have affinity with him, not because you and I are into mariachi, but it's a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
It is something unique about their personality that makes them stand out. And like you said, on the other side, we build authority. And I was talking to somebody who's doing a pretty good job of getting online anyway, publicity, right? But the problem is they're not turning that into anything else because they're not getting direct clients. But if you're the one that's been on 28 TV shows and you have 22 magazine articles and they get the packet like June Ree, my martial arts instructor, he had a magazine that was all the magazine articles he had ever had, right? So he's got this big thing, and then he's got a reel of all the TV interviews he had ever had, and everybody who came within 5 feet of him had to see them all, right?
Right,
So,
right.
so they got a copy of the magazine, and they got it autographed, and they got the, the DVD. But that's what you do, right?
Yeah, imagine somebody was a prospect in the other example, and they were emailed, mailed, and texted a link for it to show up on your webpage, the TV article or the TV interview about the specific topic that related to them.
Yeah.
How would that affect them versus them finding some other financial advisor? It would be incredible.
Yeah.
They're going to go with you whenever the time is that they're ready to go with you. So the statistic we heard recently was 60% of people are looking for or unhappy with their current financial advisor, and half of those are actively moving. Thinking of moving. So you've got a lot of opportunity out here, but you've got to not be the same as everybody else.
Well, and to make it simple is we always start with how are we going to add 10, 20, 30, 40,000 a month in revenue, right?
Revenue,
And-
not assets under management, but revenue in your pocket.
Right, money coming in the door.
Right.
And then how are we going to do that in the least expensive way possible? And that's picking up the money that's on the floor that nobody knew was there without somebody like us looking at the practice and showing it to you in many cases. But then it's, what list do I have, right? Do I have a list of people who've raised their hands? Do I have a list of people who are referrals? Do I have a list of people that I talked to and didn't turn into clients? Do I have a list of people who used to be clients who aren't clients now? Start with lists of people that somehow you've touched already, and then say, what are my personal resources? What are my staff resources? What resources do we have already? So, one of them, Suzanne, she's sitting there in an office building, and she's surrounded by other little businesses that all should be feeding her traffic, and she's never bothered to talk to any of them, right? And she had a estate planning attorney that they shared a conference room with. I mean, literally, they would schedule the conference room, and they shared a conference room in a shared office space, and she had never had a conversation with the estate planning attorney.
Wow.
Right?
That's money lying on the floor.
That's beyond that. That's money, stacked. Beating
And as we're talking about this, you guys can write down things that were some ideas from what we're talking about.
Yeah, but think about, what are your hobbies? What have you done in the past? What interesting? And the other thing is, who do you know, right? Is within my own business is, I had the president of Wells Fargo. I had the chief financial officer for the Denver Broncos. I had the marketing director for the Denver Nuggets. And if you go through, that list of like who was already clients and don't utilize that. We had the president of a $780 million electronics chain. Well, they were a high-end store. They had a big, good client list, right? So you start thinking about who are my current clients and how do they reach out? Who are my friends? But what do organizations, different things are they attached to? What are my hobbies? And how do I leapfrog off of that? And also, then you go through all the list of people you've already interacted with in some way.
Right, and that last one you just mentioned, that's the really fast ones you can attack.
Yeah.
Because those guys can get email, mail, outbound phone calls, and you can be setting appointments and doing meetings with people today.
Yeah.
And yet, somebody that might have been a lead a year ago, people tend to ignore and not ever talk to again. Yeah. And those people, if they, if it's September and last September they were interested, the assumption is they weren't interested ever again. And that's just a horrible assumption. This might be the time for them to be interested. And we need to, now you may be thinking, well, I don't know how to call them. What do I say? That's what we can help you with. But and at advisorwealthmastery.com, we've got a lot of resources, a whole bundle of free resources to help you with that. So, make sure you go there and get that package. But you can call them, and if nothing else, you can take that list of prospects, of all the stuff we talked about, the list of prospects of people that have raised their hand, said, we want some information, we want to talk to you. But maybe they even talked to you and they said no, that they didn't want to work with you at this time. They're still 100 times more likely than just somebody that you bought a list from, or that's, if you walk down the street and talk to somebody, those guys are still more likely to be a future client than anybody else. So you could just, if nothing else, start calling them. But ideally, you're calling them, emailing them, texting them, and doing the other things that we talked about already. So that's a gold mine right there. The next layer are these other ones that we talked about, and all of that stuff is money lying on the floor that we can help you with first. That's the first line of attack. And we have literally seen doubling of business within months just by attacking this stuff. It's not that we wouldn't want to do all the other things that we've talked about in other segments of building out a robust marketing plan, and we want to do that to make the business healthy, but we start with this first.
Yeah. Well, and so to summarize it, because we're going to run out of time here, is you start with looking at what's internal. It's like the podcast. We were going to kick off the podcast and do all that stuff, a few months ago. And I sat down with a blank legal pad and say, well, who might be an interesting guest? Well, I have Jordan Balford's, college roommate, best friend. He might be interesting. Yeah. I have Dick Grasso's, a good friend of Dick Grasso, who used to be in charge of the New York Stock Exchange. He was in charge of the New York Stock Exchange during 9/11. Of course, we have the former police commissioner of New York, but tied to the financial industry, the Wolf of Wall Street and the head of the, Wall Street. Now, I've been to Strat Oakmont and all that stuff before it imploded, but I don't have a direct tie to either one, but I have good friend who will probably do anything that I want, who can do that. And so you start going to the list and say, well, who do I know? Well, I know the guy who used to be Wells Fargo, and I know the guy who is on the board of directors at McDonald's, and you start going through the list, and it's like, well, first hand or second hand, most of us have like this big database. It's like with Sudan. Right. Okay, you were an actress. Who do you know in that industry? You were a stand-up comedian. Who do you know there? All of a sudden, you start coming up with all kinds of interesting names. Sure. Or people who have a big group organization they're involved with. But anyway, we got to call it a day. Anything last?
No, I think that's what we want to start with. So start making that list of people in the groups that we talked about. But make sure you go to advisorwealthmastery.com and get the free package of stuff. That'll give you some target ways to start attacking those groups as well. And you can watch some of our other segments to get some more content.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.